When playing a Hardcore Nuzlocke, you can fly so high until you hit an opponent that makes you crash. Which is why I'm going to attempt doing a Hardcore Nuzlocke on Pokemon Black 2 just using flying types. Now, on the face of it, flying types have great attack and speed stats where their defenses usually lack. Pokemon Black 2 also opened up a plethora of unique encounters to ensure us a run for our money. See what I did there? A run for our money? And with that being said, let's see if I can beat a Pokemon Black 2 flying type Hardcore Nuzlocke with level caps in place, no items except ones being held, one Pokemon per route, no legendaries or mythicals, and any Pokemon that faints gets permanently boxed. Now in the beginning of the game, we don't have a starter with the flying type, so I just choose Snivy, giving my rival Tepig, which I forgot later in the game is also weak to flying. We also didn't have much trouble in the first battle, mainly because Tepig doesn't have a fire move. Alright bro, can we just talk about my boy Alder? This man straight up jumps off a whole mountain, then proceeds to walk around and sniff a child. Is nobody talking about this? Like, why am I the only one that sees this, bro? After evading child pedophilia, we make it to Route 3 where we can catch our first encounter of Pidove. We name him Blix, and Blix has a plus attack minus defense nature, and I will definitely take that. And after getting some EV training under our belt, it is time to battle Hugh, but it really wasn't that bad considering that the AI didn't register Pidove's ability, Big Pecs, that negates any status drop of any kind. So after pummeling it with a few gusts, we are able to take home the win. Now, as we traverse through Route 2, I run into something super rare, a 1 in 8,192% chance shiny Patrat, and man, look at that color code. I seriously was debating on doing a normal type run after finding it considering how rare they are in these games, but I was more inclined to see how flying types would do in this Hardcore Nuzlocke challenge. We at least catch it, and this thing is going to be our good luck charm for the rest of the run. Now, we have our first real challenge of the run, Charon, the normal expert with only a Pidove. He sends out Patrat as I lob out Blix, and on the first turn I outspeed with Leer to drop his defense as he chips me with Tackle. I then smash him to the red with a frustration as he just sets up with a workup. Charon then uses his only super potion, so 2 more quick attacks are enough to knock that thing out. His last Pokemon is Lillipup, and he outspeeds to set up with workup as I use frustration to knock him to a third. He then uses Tackle to bring me down to 12 HP, but definitely would have KO'd if it was a crit as I knock him to the red with frustration. Now this would have been a bigger issue if we didn't have priority quick attack to earn us our first gym badge. Now as I roll up to Burbank City, I see that there's a girl and her dad arguing, and I guess there can be daddy issues in any Pokemon game. Now with Roxy, she's got a very offensively defensive team where I just have Pidove, but since Pidove has just learned Roost and Workup, I may be able to pull something off here. Now it is time for Roxy, the poison expert, and in this battle we can get poisoned due to Whirlipede's Venoshock, so let's hope this goes according to plan. She sends out Coughing as I lead with Blix, and on the first turn I power up with Workup as she hits me with Assurance for not much damage. Now the strat here is just to get off as many Workups as I possibly can and using Roost to heal. But fortunately we get a +3 attack without getting poisoned, and Coughing goes down to an Air Cutter for the 1-hit KO. Our last Pokemon is Whirlipede, and it outspeeds with Venoshock to bring me down to 20 HP in the yellow as we counterattack with super effective Air Cutter to 1-hit KO that thing off the map to give us our second gym badge. Alright fellas, big question here. Did any of y'all really enjoy the Pokestar Studios at all? Like, I feel like this is the biggest L the franchise has made in a long time. Just comment down below if you guys feel the same. Now we finally make it to Castelia City, and in the sewers, Team Plasma is waiting for Hugh and I to do battle. The battle itself really wasn't that hard considering Hugh and I's Pokemon overlevel theirs, and this is really where the game starts to open up for us. If we run around in the sewers, we are able to find ourselves our second encounter, a beautiful Zubat. We catch it and name him Batman, and what do I open my stats to see? That's right, this thing has an adamant nature plus attack minus special attack. This thing is literally perfect. But the encounters don't stop there. If we head into the Relic Passage, we are able to find ourselves our third encounter, a Woobat. We catch it and name him James, and James has a relaxed nature plus defense minus speed. That's pretty bad, but he also has the worst ability in the game, Klutz, so now we can't use any held items. As we were making preparations for the third gym, we get our first evolution, our starter that evolves into a graceful Tranquil. The evolutions don't stop there, as we get Zubat to evolve into a beastly Golbat. Not only that, we also have seen over 40 Pokemon, which means we are able to get an absurdly good item, the Eviolite, that boosts unevolved Pokemon's defensive stats. So at this point in the game, I really wanted to test my luck. Our next challenge is a bug-type gym that is weak to flying, so I went ahead and deposited Golbat and Woobat to see if I could beat the gym with just a level-capped Tranquil. And now it is time for Berg, the Castelia City gym leader, so let's see if this is possible. He sends out Swadloon as I start with Blix, and on the first 2 turns, I set up the +2 with Workup as he string shots me twice to reduce my speed. He then outspeeds and hits me with Razor Leaf for not much damage as we one-hit KO him with Air Cutter. His next Pokemon is Dwebble, and he outspeeds to hit me with Smackdown to above half as we bring him to Sturdy with Air Cutter. Berg then uses a Hyper Potion, so I go ahead and break his Sturdy once again with Quick Attack. He then slams me with Smackdown to 31 HP as we finally KO him with Air Cutter. His last Pokemon is Leavanny, and I went ahead and ran the calcs, and not even a crit cut could KO us. So with that being said, we go ahead and launch a 4-time super effective Air Cutter to one-hit KO that thing for the 3rd gym badge. After that battle, we did a lot of friendship grinding, which led us evolving Golbat into a monstrous Crobat. Fortunately too, our friendship was also high enough to evolve Woobat into Swoobat, but it's really not much of an upgrade. This now leads us to Route 4, where we have a big battle with Colress. He sends out Magnemite as I lead with James. I go ahead and outspeed with Air Cutter for a little bit of chip damage as Magnemite paralyzes me with Thunder Wave. Magnemite now outspeeds with Sparks to bring me to about half as I do a little bit more chip with Air Cutter. I am needing to do more damage on this thing, so I stay in and I tank a Spark on 17 HP as we bring it to half with one more Air Cutter. I need to switch, so I switch in Batman, who tanks the Spark pretty comfortably. I go ahead and status this thing with Confuse Ray, and fortunately it stays confused. We then use by bringing it to the red and trying to get the flinch, but Magnemite breaks through confusion and paralyzes me with Thunder Wave. Colress then uses a super potion, and after that we are able to KO that thing with 3 more bites and good confusion luck. His last Pokemon is Clink, and he outspeeds with Gear Grind that brings me down to 26 HP as we get off a Confuse Ray. I need to switch, so I get Blix out there as Clink just stays immobilized by confusion. I then set up with Workup as Clink just stays confused once more. I then use Silk Scarf boosted return that brings it down to the red, and then Clink finally takes itself out with confusion for the dub. Now what you see here is a Pokemon that is only accessible on Thursdays, and this Pokemon is none other than Mandibuzz. We go ahead and catch it and name her Sesh, and Sesh has a mild nature plus special attack minus defense. Not bad overall. As we were traversing through the desert resort, we ended up catching ourselves a Sigilith. Not only that, when we touch down in Nimbasa City, we also catch a very crucial encounter, an Emolga. I also tried my luck in the Losthorn Forest for a female Combee, but I guess my luck is still shot. One day I'll get a Vespiquen. All of this training and preparation has led us to our biggest challenge yet, Elisa, the electric expert. Now obviously my whole team is crippling weak to hers, but I think I have diverged a plan together that will lead us to victory. Let's see how this goes. She starts off the battle with Emolga as I lead with Terra. I immediately use Light Screen to boost my team's special defense as she Volt switches for not much into Flappy. We then use Psybeam that does a huge amount of damage, bringing her into the red as she paralyzes me with a Thunder Wave. Elisa then uses a Hyper Potion, healing her to full as I bring her back into the red with a Psybeam, but not only that, we get the 5% confusion luck. Now here's where playing risky pays off. Fortunately, Flappy knocks itself out of confusion as I set up a Tailwind, boosting all my Pokemon's speed. Now she sends back out her Emolga that Volt switches me into the yellow, and then sends out Sepstrika that tanks my Psybeam to around half thanks to its Citrus Berry. At this point, I'm going to lose Terra, so I switch out into Sesh to tank a volt switch that does around half as she sends back out Emolga. I fortunately outspeed, bringing Emolga to above half with a punishment as it goes for pursuit, bringing me down below half. At this point, I have to make a sacrifice knowing a volt switch is coming in the near future, so I switch James into a volt switch that takes him to the red. This switches in the big and bad Substrika, and I think y'all know where this is going. James did absolutely nothing useful for the team, but his sacrifice here might mean that we actually have a chance in beating our hardest challenge thus far. And so, with one final quick attack, James goes down for our first death on the board. On the bright side, this gives us a free switch into Blix. My mind genuinely cannot comprehend this, but Substrika throws by going for a quick attack, so a Silk Scarf boosted return one-hit KOs that beast off the map. Now we still can't relax yet because she still has Emolga lurking in the back. All we have to do is survive one volt switch, but she just goes for pursuit, absolutely throwing. So y'all boys already know a Silk Scarf boosted return knocks that thing out for the one-hit KO for the win and the gym badge. I have no idea what happened there, and I'm just lucky I only lost one of my mons, but that was a huge dub. Man, fuck a model walk. I am straight up model running up out of here. Now, as we progress through the Marvelous Bridge, there are these shadow spots that will appear that will give you EV increasing wings. Not only that, it's the location of our next encounter, a ducklet, which we catch and name her Grapes. Grapes has a quiet nature plus special attack and minus speed. Not too bad considering we need that special attack stat as high as possible. We then see Hugh absolutely crash out with this plasma grunt, and then we obtain the best item in the game, the expert belt, that boosts the power of super effective moves. And now that we have obtained that item and did some light training against Team Plasma leader Rude, we can now challenge the 5th gym leader, Clay, the ground expert. And saying that out loud, it sounds kind of funny. Like, what are you, an expert of dirt? Get a job. He starts the battle with his intimidating Krokorok as I lead with Grapes. On the first turn, Krokorok outspeeds with a crunch that brings me well below half as we still don't do enough with Expert Belt boosted Bubble Beam to KO. I want to say my nature had a lot to do with that, but Ducklet's stats are already terrible as it is, so I guess it was the latter. I then switch into Batman that outspeeds, and not only that, one-hit KOs him with Acrobatics. His second Pokemon is Excadrill, his ace, so I keep up the momentum by outspeeding him with Confuse Ray, but he breaks through and hits me with Slash, but for not much. I then use Acrobatics to surprisingly bring him to half, but then it triggers his Citrus Berry, bringing him back above. And thank God he stays confused because a Rock Slide would have definitely have KO'd. Fishing for a flinch, I go for a bite that brings him to half as he breaks out of confusion, hitting me with a Rock Slide, but somehow we survive on 4 HP. Using this as a lesson, I switch into Sesh that avoids the incoming Rock Slide on the way in. Sesh and him duke it out with Slash and Punishment, but in the end, he hits me with a Rock Slide down to 3 HP, so I definitely need to switch. I then switch into Blix that tanks a Metal Claw on the way in, and then finally takes that thing out with a Silk Scarf boosted return. His last and final Pokemon is Sandslash, and I overpower it with a Roost return combo that ends up outdoing it, so one final return earns us our 5th gym badge. With that win under our belt, we can progress through the Driftvale tournaments while also settling some Team Plasma shenanigans. As we were also progressing through Chargestone Cave, Grapes evolves into a beautiful Swanna. Let's get it. This now leads us to the 6th gym leader, Skyla, in her flying types. She starts the battle with Swoobat as I lead with Batman. Now I know what y'all are all thinking, Crobat is weak to Psychic, but he is just there to set up the Confuse Ray, which turns in our favor with the Confusion Luck. This now gives us a great pivot into Sesh that resists any Psychic moves due to its Dark typing. Luckily, Swoobat is still enduring damage from Confusion, so I just go ahead and set up Tailwind to boost my team's speed. We now outspeed with Feint Attack that brings it down to the red as he uses an Acrobatics for a little bit of chip damage. Fortunately, Skyla uses a full restore, so we are able to KO that Love Bat with 2 consecutive Feint Attacks. Up next is her ace, Swanna, and not wanting to get absolutely annihilated by an Air Slash, I switch into Grapes to tank the incoming one. Due to my minus speed nature, she is able to hit me with an air slash to 25 HP, but I heal most of the damage off with Roost. She then fortunately goes for a feather dance that drops my attack, which is okay because I'm a special attacker. I then retaliate with an air slash that actually brings her to half, which is amazing. But probably not as amazing as she feels because she hits me to a quarter with air slash and she gets the flinch. At this point, I am definitely outclassed, so I switch into Crobat, who tanks the air slash really well. I then outspeed with a Flying Gym boosted acrobatics to finally KO Swanna. Her last Pokemon is definitely her trickiest, Skarmory. Just to status it, I use Confuse Ray as she sets up her speed with agility. I definitely need to switch, so I get Moped out there to tank a resisted Steel Wing. But since Steel Wing is a contact move, Skarmory gets paralyzed by my static ability. We now outspeed, so Spark brings her to half as Steel Wing brings us to half. And fortunately, after landing a Spark, Skarmory stays paralyzed, so we are able to zap that ungodly creation back to where it came from for our 6th gym badge. Now, here's where your boy up. On this map, we can see that we can catch Drifblim and or Skarmory in the Reversal Mountains. So I looked up and there is another location of Route 14 where you can also catch a Drifblim. So I was just like, rappel through the Reversal Mountains and then catch a Drifblim. Then go back and then catch Skarmory in the Reversal Mountains. What I didn't take into account for is there are Swablu also on Route 14 as well. And what do you think I found?
Bruh.
Yeah, we found a Swablu and named him Muffin, and I'm not happy about it. This also means that our Reversal Mountain encounter is 50-50 getting a Skarmory. And what do you think we got? No, I thought the music was gonna help! We catch her and name her Blimps, and this is terrible because Skarmory was our only way to handle rock and ice moves that none of my Pokemon resist. This means that attempt 1 has officially come to an end. Nah, I'm just playing, fellas. Let's get this bag. This does lead us into our next trainer battle with Hugh, and his Pokemon have definitely buffed a bit. He starts the battle with his Unpheasant as I lead with Moped. I go for a Spark as he sets up a Whirlwind, so a Volt Switch puts him in his place, switching into Crobat. He next sends out Emboar, but a super effective Acrobatics takes care of that thing. He next sends out Simipour, so I switch back into a Malga that tanks a Leer. I then use Spark, bringing it to a quarter as Simipour gets the luckiest crit ever, destroying Moped with one Scald. Losing a Pokemon like this just to our rival is kinda degrading in a way. I then just send in Crobat to finish the job with one more Acrobatics. In hindsight, we at least find a Pelipper on Route 15 and we end up catching her and naming her Gulp. If the list of losing Pokemon wasn't full enough, there was an unexpected battle in the next town over and we ended up losing our Dark-type Sesh to a sludge-bombing Garbodor. Sesh was the only way to get through the Psychic Elite Four member, so this throws a huge wrench into my plans. That emotional roller coaster finally allows us to challenge the 7th gym leader, Drayden, the Dragon Expert. He sends out Druddigon as I lead with Blimpski. On the first turn, I outspeed and connect with a Thunder Wave to paralyze him as he smashes me to 52 HP in the yellow with Crunch. I definitely need to switch, so I get Batman out there as Druddigon stays paralyzed. This is great, so now I can set up with my Paraflinch strategy using Confuse Ray, and it works perfect confusing the Druddigon. I then send in Blix, and after I set up to +2 with Workup and Druddigon only hits a Crunch in the process, we are able to one-hit KO that thing off the map. Up next is Flygon, and since we are faster, Blix just one-hit KOs him as well with the return. I'll take it. His last Pokemon is his ace, Haxorus, and since he used a negative priority Dragon Tail, we are able to outspeed and one-hit KO him with the return for the dub and the 7th gym badge. Now, as smooth as the battle with Drayden was, now we have a battle with Zizzlin and his full team of ice types. So pray for me. He starts the battle with Cryogonal as I lead with Terra. I immediately outspeed and set up with a light screen as Cryogonal absolutely destroys Terra with a crit Ice Beam. That is so devastating. But fortunately, this gives us a free switch into Batman that gets a revenge kill with Acrobatics, knocking that thing out. His next Pokemon is another Cryogonal, which we easily handle with another Acrobatics. His final Pokemon is Weavile, and he goes for priority Ice Shard, bringing us to half as we bring it to over half with Acrobatics. Given our luck in the beginning of the battle, I switch into Pelipper to tank the Ice Shard to above half. Weavile then goes for a Night Slash, knocking us to 34 HP as we counter with a Surf that somehow doesn't KO. I then go for Protect, scouting what it's going to do next, so then I switch into Swanna that luckily survives a crit Night Slash. What the hell is this battle? I just send in Blix, and after tanking 2 Ice Shards, we are able to finally take that thing out with a return. Dear God. Let us just refresh our brains with a rundown Marine Tube. I can already feel the serotonin coursing through my brain as we speak. This finally connects us with our 8th and final gym leader, Marlin. Waited 9 months in the womb just to be named Marlin. He sends out Caracosta as I lead with Blimpski. On the first turn, I outspeed with a Will-O-Wisp to burn and half his attack as he brings me down to half with a Smackdown. I then pivot into Batman that tanks the incoming Smackdown very comfortably. I then use Confuse Ray to add more status, and then Caracosta stays confused. I then switch into Muffin and she tanks a resisted Scald on the way in. And after that, Muffin and him just duke it out, but in the end, we outwalled him for the KO, destroying him with one final Bulldoze. He next sends in Wailord, but after knocking him to half with Bulldoze, he just sets up Amnesia, so one more Bulldoze KOs. He now sends in his final Pokemon, his ace, Jellicent. We outspeed with Bulldoze that brings it to half thanks to its Citrus Berry, so we have to tank an Ominous Wind, and thank God we survive on 18 HP. So on the next turn, we are finally able to KO that thing with a Bulldoze for the win and the final gym badge. And you know what? I might have undersold Swablu earlier, but guess what? Lesson learned. We learn a new thing every day. After obtaining the gym badge, it brings us to our second to last encounter, a Gligar, which we catch and name him Vamp. This now leads us to a ton of Team Plasma filler, and our first order of business is taking on Colress and his steel types. Now at first glance, it looks like my team is absolutely cooked, but this is where Gligar is gonna shine. He sends in Magneton as I lead with Blimpski. On the first turn, I go for a stockpile, boosting my defense and special defense as he paralyzes me with Thunder Wave. Now he outspeeds with a Volt Switch that nukes me to about a quarter as we stay paralyzed, and he sends in Kling Klang. He then slams me with a Thunderbolt that Blimp survives on 2 HP, and then Baton passes the boost to Gligar. We then use Priority Quick Attack to chip it, but not only that, it pops his air balloon as he just sets up with a Shift Gear. On the next turn, we both set up with Shift Gear and Swords Dance to boost our stats. He then goes for another Shift Gear as we use Bulldoze to knock him to full restore range. Colress then goes for a full restore, so on that free turn, I set up with one more Swords Dance to confirm the KO with one more Bulldoze. He next sends in his Magnezone, and we break his Sturdy with a Quick Attack, but then Magnezone does what he does best. Up next, this is Bulky Matang, but a +4 U-turn was more than enough to KO that thing. This also means I get a free switch into Muffin as Colress sends in Behem. I just go for a Dragon Pulse for not much as Behem sets up with a Calm Mind. I then go for another one that brings it to half as Behem uses Recover, restoring all its health. This is definitely not good. I then go for a Bulldoze, knocking its speed as it just goes for Recover once more. Seeing no progress, I switch into Blix that tanks a Psychic on 4 HP, and needing to do damage on this thing, I go for a Silk Scarf boosted return, and it just falls short of the KO. So unfortunately, our starter goes down to one more Psychic. Rest in peace, my dear friend. This at least gives us a free switch into Vamp that can clean up the battle with a Quick Attack and 2 more Bulldozes on Magneton. This at least gives us a double on Colress, but it comes at a huge cost. We at least defeat the Shadow Trio with no problems and defeat Kyurem with Muffin, so now this segues us into our hardest challenge thus far, Ghetsis. Ghetsis sends out Cofagrigus as I send out Muffin. Muffin really can't do anything here, so I switch into Gulp to tank the incoming Toxic, but I put a Pecha Berry on him to heal off that poison. I then end up protecting the next turn, and then I hit him with a Surf to around half as he finally poisoned me with Toxic. I need to do more damage, so I go for another Surf, and dear God, we get a crit to annihilate that thing for the one-hit KO. Up next is his Electros, a huge threat, so I switch into Vamp to resist the Thunderbolt. Now, Vamp is a very good switch here, but Electros has Levitate as its ability, so ground moves are a no-go. The best move I have is Quick Attack, and I at least whittle him down to half before I go for a U-turn, bringing him into the red, switching in Batman that tanks a Flamethrower on the switch. Ghetsis then goes for a full restore as we deal pitiful damage with Acrobatics. Now, this is where I should have switched back into Vamp, but I just watch as my Poison Fang brings him to half as my dear Crobat goes down to one more Thunderbolt. rest in peace, homie. I then just send in Blimsky that can finish the job with a double-powered Hex. Up next is his Toxicroak, so I go ahead and use Will-O-Wisps to burn him and half his attack as he does pitiful damage with Poison Jab. I then set up my defenses with a Stockpile as he uses a Shadow Ball to bring me to half. I then get to +3 with Stockpile since he was using Sucker Punch instead of Shadow Ball, so one Hex is enough to KO that demon. Now here is the second biggest threat on Ghetsis' team, Hydreigon, and we somehow don't outspeed and he KOs Blimp. That's right, my girl Blimp survived on a singular HP, and I don't know how Blimp survived that, but at least we get the burn off as we pivot into Muffin. Muffin does have to take a crunch on the way in, but on the next turn, she fortunately evades a Dragon Rush, so we are able to knock that thing out with a Dragon Pulse plus burn damage. His second to last Pokemon is Seismitoad, so I go ahead and set up to +2 attack and speed with Dragon Dance as we tank 2 Sludge Waves on 57 HP. I then proceed to do terrible damage with Bulldoze as Sludge Wave almost KOs me at 27 HP in the red. I definitely need to switch, so I get Grapes in there to tank the Sludge Wave for very little damage. Since we outspeed due to Bulldoze's speed drop, Air Slash does over half and flinches, so we are able to eject that monster with one more Air Slash. His final Pokemon is Drapion, and he brings the heat by knocking me to 49 HP with Night Slash as we knock his attack down 2 stages with Feather Dance. I need to do some damage, so Drapion hits his Night Slash, and fortunately no crit, so we survive on 21 HP and do half with Surf. I definitely need to switch, so I get Gulp out there to tank the Night Slash plus Poison to half. Drapion then hits me to a quarter with Night Slash as we bring it to the red with Surf. My team has taken a lot of damage, so if this Night Slash crits, the run is over. Drapion goes for the Night Slash, and thank God we survive on 17 HP so we can take that thing out with one more Ice Beam. It's time to round out my full team of 6 again, so we go around looking for our 10% encounter, had to get that off my chest by the way, a Mantine. I just end up lobbing my Master Ball at it and name him Flapjack, and now it's time to progress through the victory road. On our way, we run into N that finally gives us access to Waterfall, and this right here is going to be the key to getting a very crucial item. If we Waterfall down the Victory Bridge, we will be able to get a Razor Fang, and if we slap this on Gligar at night, he will evolve into a sturdy Gliscor. And after running through the badge checkpoints at max speed, we are able to take on our last rival fight with Hugh. He starts the battle with Umpheasant as I lead with Blimsky. On the first turn, I outspeed with Will-O-Wisp for the burn as he hits me with a Swagger to confuse. Of course, knowing my luck, I hit myself in confusion as he brings me to half with Aerial Ace. Blimsky breaks through and gets off a Stockpile to boost my defense, and Aerial Ace really isn't doing much now. We somehow break through confusion again and now can baton pass the attack and defense boost to Vamp. Vamp then takes very pitiful damage from Aerial Ace on the way in, so on the next turn we are able to one-hit KO that thing with Acrobatics. His next Pokemon is Simipour, and thanks to my minus speed nature, we have to tank a Surf on 35 HP, but knock back with an Acrobatics to KO. Emboar can't outspeed me, so that was an easy KO with Acrobatics, and now it is time for the Bouffalon. The range was really dicey to KO, so I U-turn and switch into Muffin that tanks a huge amount of damage from Head Charge. I need to switch, so I get Gulp out there and tanks the Head Charge on 14 HP in the red. I think I see the range with Surf, so I go for it, and fortunately we get the KO. What a battle. Alright, we have now made it to the Elite Four, and fortunately with a full team of 6. We got Blimsky with Baton Pass, Will-O-Wisp, Stockpile, and Hex. Gulp with Stockpile, Protect, Ice Beam, and Surf. Grapes with Air Slash, Surf, Feather Dance, and Ice Beam. Muffin with Dragon Pulse, Cotton Guard, Bulldoze, and Dragon Dance. Vamp with Acrobatics, Ice Fang, X-Scissor, and Swords Dance. And our final member, Flapjack, with Surf, Air Slash, Agility, and Signal Beam. The first member I choose to battle with is Caitlyn and her Psychic types. She immediately starts the battle with her bulky Musharna as I lead with Vamp. I outspeed and set up with Swords Dance as she hits me with a Yawn. I then use X-Scissor and it brings her super deep in the red as she sets up with a Reflect, boosting her team's defense. Vamp also falls asleep, but this sparks a very, very devious idea. Basically, what you're seeing here is I'm stalling out all of her PP by switching in Grapes, baiting the charge beam, and then switching into Gliscor, resisting it, and switching out when she uses Dream Eater. This goes on for a long time, but eventually we make it happen. It actually worked way too well because all she had left was Reflect, so I set up the +6 attack with Gliscor and then proceeded to sweep the entire rest of her team with either Ice Fang and or X Scissor. That took a while, but we got through it deathless. Now up next is Marshall, and you wouldn't think that he would be a hard battle considering we have the type advantage, but a lot of his Pokemon have rock moves, so let's see how we fare. He starts off the battle with Throw as I send out Vamp. We immediately go for an Acrobatics to bring him into the red as he uses a Rock Tomb for not much damage, but it drops our speed. Marshall does take this turn to use a full restore, so I take full advantage of that, setting up to +2 with Swords Dance. Because of that attack boost, we are able to get more leverage on that KO with Acrobatics. Up next is Conkeldurr, but he was easily handled with a one-hit KO from Acrobatics. Up next is his Minshao, but it only hits us to half with a high jump kick, so an Acrobatics will take him out as well. Here comes the biggest threat on his team, Sock with Sturdy. He outspeeds with Rock Slide, bringing me to 67 HP in the yellow as I bring him to half with Ice Fang. He ends up using Rock Slide again and... well, this is bad. I switch into Muffin and immediately she gets cooked to half by a Rock Slide. I then pivot into Gulp and somehow she avoids the Rock Slide. I then use Protect, and then on the next turn, Sock hits us all the way down to 42 HP, and for whatever reason, I use Stockpile. I then just use Protect, stalling because I can see Gulp's life slowly leaving me. I just watch as Sock goes for Rock Slide, and by the grace of Arceus, Rock Slide misses so we can use Surf, but it brings him to 1 HP in the red. I then just stall with one more Protect and then switch Grapes in, who fortunately survives a Rock Slide on 28 HP in the red. And even with the minus speed nature, we outspeed with Surf to finally KO that stressful heathen for the win. Up next is Grimsley, the Dark User, and this battle was nothing short of a bloodbath. He sends out his Liepard, but it only gets off a Fake Out and a Night Slash as I set up to +2 with Swords Dance. And that's all I needed, and after that, Vamp goes on a rampage, destroying everything on the field with either X Scissor and or Bulldoze to give us a very effortless dub. That very zen mindset I had coming out of that battle completely fled when I challenged Chantal and her ghost types. She sends out Cofagrigus as I lead with Blimpski. On the first turn, I set up with a Stockpile as she uses Will-O-Wisp to burn me. I then use another Stockpile, and thank God I did because a Shadow Ball nukes me all the way to 69 HP after burn. I then use Baton Pass to transfer the boost to Vamp as he easily tanks a Shadow Ball for not much. I then go for Swords Dance as he fortunately misses a Will-O-Wisp. Definitely not wanting to get burned here, I go for the KO with Acrobatics, but she survives on a sliver in the red as she burns me with her next Will-O-Wisp. On her full restore turn, I at least get to +4 with Swords Dance. Vamp then uses Acrobatics to bring her well below half as she uses a Shadow Ball that brings me to 30 HP after burn. So fortunately, we can outspeed that thing with Acrobatics for the KO. Her next Pokemon is Chandelure, so I go ahead and pivot into Flapjack that tanks a Shadow Ball on above half. We get hit one more time with Shadow Ball, being brought to 29 HP as we bring her to a quarter with Surf thanks to her Citrus Berry. I need to switch, so I get Gulp out there that evades a Fire Blast on the way in. We get hit with a Shadow Ball all the way to 23 HP, but can finally KO that menace with one more Surf. Her next Pokemon is Drifblim, and seeing what it's going for, I use Protect to scout it out, then I switch Grapes into an Acrobatics to below half. Grapes then outspeeds with an Ice Beam to bring her to the yellow, but not only that, we get the 10% frozen chance. This means that Grapes gets to see another day, finishing that thing off with one more Ice Beam. Chantal then sends in her last Pokemon, Golurk. But that was an easy sweep with Surf for the one-hit KO, securing us our final Elite Four battle. Now with Iris coming up, she is possibly one of the hardest challenges we have yet to take on. I mean, just look at that team. absolutely stacked, and my team is not what you would call a bruiser brigade. We are at the final testament for my flying types, and our trials and tribulations have led us to this moment, so let's put all we got into this battle versus champion Iris. She starts the battle with her beastly Hydreigon as I lead with Grapes. On the first turn, Hydreigon misses a charge beam, so we are able to bring that thing to half with Ice Beam. She then hits the 4x super effective charge beam, but Grapes tanks it on 25 HP and can KO that thing with an Ice Beam. Her Lapras is up, and needing to conserve my team's HP, I let Grapes get off one more Air Slash as she gets taken out by one more Ice Beam. Rest in peace. This does mean that we can get a free switch into Blimpski. I top Blimp's Thunderbolt, and it brings her to over half as Lapras misses a Sing. I go for a Thunderbolt, and we got the very lowest roll that we possibly could have gotten. Not only that, her Ice Beam takes us super deep into the red, and we get frozen. Iris then reverses everything we just did with a full restore as I stay frozen. I can't switch anything into an Ice Beam, so down goes Blimpski. At this point, I just send out Flapjack, and on the first turn, we do awful damage with Air Slash, but she misses her Sing. We hit an Air Slash again, and we get the flinch. All right, things are looking up. We hit Air Slash again, and we get a second flinch. All we have to do is get a high roll. And fortunately, we do get that high roll, taking down Lapras, but not only that, we took 0 damage. But up next is her Druddigon with Rock Slide, and this thing is a big threat. We fortunately outspeed and hit Ice Beam to under half as Flapjack gets absolutely crushed by one Rock Slide. I just send in Vamp, and we immediately use Swords Dance to boost our attack as we get hit to above half with Flamethrower. I use Swords Dance once more, getting to +4 as we get hit to a quarter with Rock Slide, but I attached a Citrus Berry, bringing Vamp back above half. And now we have the proper setup to KO that ugly dragon with 1 Acrobatics. Up next is her Aggron, but he gets immediately KO'd with 1 Bulldoze on the way in. This segues us into one of her biggest threats on her team, Archeops. I'm just praying that we have enough defense to survive 1 Acrobatics, and we do, just on 8 HP, so we can take that thing out with 1 Acrobatics. We are at her last Pokemon, Haxorus, her biggest threat, and because of that, unfortunately, I have to let Vamp go to a single Dual Shot. Rest in peace, bro. You are the only reason we have made it this far. At this point, I send out Muffin that hopefully survives a Dual Chop, but that didn't really go according to plan. This now means that I am at my last Pokemon as well, Gulp. Haxorus outspeeds, but he just goes for Dragon Dance, so we get off an Ice Beam that crits, but she has a Focus Sash, leaving her at only 1 HP. To a lot of y'all, this looks like I have the advantage, but sadly, y'all are mistaken. Haxorus can now easily take me out with 1 Dual Chop. I just brace myself as Gulp gets hit by the first one, but I attached a Citrus Berry, healing off some of the damage. All we have to do is survive the second one. And Gulp does it, surviving on 30 HP and destroying that menace with 1 more Ice Beam. This run was just as painful and rigorous as it looked, but my flying types prevailed, leading me to beat a Pokemon Black 2 flying type Hardcore Nuzlocke. What an insane run, and if you enjoyed what you saw, drop a like, and if you want to see more content like this, drop a sub. I love all of my viewers, so if you want to see a specific run done, comment down below. But this, my friends, was a Pokemon Black 2 flying type Hardcore Nuzlocke, and I hope to see you in my next run.